the Elder Scrolls Online, the Morrowind expansion. My name is Brian Francis. I am actually visible for once. I'm down here in the corner, in the tiniest little box. Oh my god, that man is a void. And I am joined by two larger faces in the bottom left-hand corner. Gamasutra editor Alex Waro, and
Hi.
ZeniMax Online Studios studio director Matt Firor.
Game director.
Game
Yep.
director.
Hey, everyone.
Hi, Alex. Could you briefly? I guess I just said who you were, but could you just say hi and tell them how much you love Elder Scrolls?
Okay. It would be my pleasure. Hey, I'm Gamasutra editor Alex Waro. We are back today with Matt. We've been doing a bit on the Elder Scrolls. Wow, Elder Scrolls, the Elder Scrolls. We recently streamed Morrowind and then Oblivion with lead designer Ken Ralston, and we thought it was super appropriate to come back and take a look at the Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind expansion. I think we streamed this game a couple months ago, Brian, right? And now we're back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, Matt, if you have time, we just kind of want to check in with you and like hear how the project's going. And I personally kind of want to know who you are as a game developer and how you came to work on this project.
Well, I've been in the game industry for a long time. People would most know me. I was one of the designers and the producer of Dark Age of Camelot at Mythic Entertainment way back in the day when you guys were mere lads. My first game was actually in 1988, so it's been a long haul. But I joined Mythic Entertainment, I think, in early mid 90s, and we did a couple of games, about 10 games before Dark Age of Camelot. Then when EA bought Mythic, I left at that point, and then Bethesda contacted me and wanted to set up an MMO studio, and so I've been here ever since in Hunt Valley, Maryland.
Nice. Good. I'm from Maryland, so I haven't spent a lot of time in Hunt Valley, but I'm familiar with the area.
Great. Yeah, you should stop by.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to get started, to catch up everyone here, Alex, where are you hanging? Did you follow me?
Trying to find a temple to climb.
I can't show them you climb the temple if you're not with me.
That's how you beat this game, right? You play it your own way, and my own way of playing is to climb every temple in the game.
Right. So to clarify what Alex is talking about, when we were hanging out with developer Ken Ralston last couple weeks, he told us that back when they were making Morrowind, inside Bethesda, there was a group called the Temple Climbers Club of people who would just climb temples when playing Morrowind. Alex, because this came up while Alex himself was scaling a holy building in Oblivion, Alex has now dedicated himself to find one of those and do it forever here. So, there you are.
Hi. You found the biggest temple. Great job.
Cool. Well, I'm going to need to walk up to this biggest temple to go talk to this guy for this quest. So you may, for those of you who were here last time, I'm back with Raincoat, a woman whose name is a pun for raincoat, but she doesn't know about that because raincoats aren't in Elder Scrolls. And I'm joined by Salamantha, who seems to have time traveled from Oblivion, from our game in Oblivion. So here are our recurring characters. Now that I'm done making stupid jokes, Matt, what's it been like going back to Morrowind for you?
Well, it's the Elder Scrolls game that put the Elder Scrolls on the map. There were a few Elder Scrolls games before that, but it was the first kind of really open world on Xbox. Console players could play it. It's the first Elder Scrolls game that a mass amount of people played, and so it's kind of beloved in the franchise as being kind of the origin of most Elder Scrolls fans' entry into the IP. So of course, after that was Oblivion, which grew the market even more, and then Skyrim, where of course it really went mass market. So. It's really cool. It's different. It's not high fantasy and traditional high fantasy. It's got that really cool setting where it's kind of alien and different, and it's got Dunmer dark elf culture. It's got a really crazy system of gods and a whole lot of really cool political stories and different groups that don't like each other, and it's just really, really deep and really, really cool.
I think what interests me most about it, just from like an industry perspective, is the idea that you've just released an expansion pack for a massively multiplayer online game, and it's not like you have to pay real money for Morrowind, right? That's kind of a departure for this game so far. You guys have been putting out content updates for years, and there is a whole in-game economy. There's crowns that can be bought for real money, but Morrowind seems to be like a full-fledged expansion pack, the likes of which we haven't seen for an MMO in a long time. Can you sort of like maybe shine a little light on what it was like to try and put this package together, and sort of why you think it's important to sell an expansion to a free-to-play MMO?
Yeah, I think the main goal of ESO Morrowind was, of course, to bring out a mass amount of content, a new class, the Warden, a new PvP battleground mode, so you could have small-scale PvP. But really what we wanted to do is put all that together in a package and make it in a way that new players could come in and play the game as well as older players. And that's the biggest difference between what an MMO expansion is, with air quotes, and what we did, because since we're not level-based, really, the world is essentially levelless, you can come in and play the game and go anywhere you want no matter what level you are, which means with Morrowind, we have a great new zone, we have a new tutorial, and it's a perfect chance for players who haven't yet played ESO to jump in and see content for the first time, along with all the veteran players who are also seeing it for the first time. So you don't feel like you're behind, and you can just jump in and play. And then, of course, if you're a new player, you get the whole rest of ESO to experience also. So, and it's all included for that price. So it's a kind of a different way to take a really cool virtual world game and let new players experience it at the same time that veteran players experience it for the first time.
Do you think it's a more effective way to get new players into an established MMO than just anything else? Because I mean, like I said, you guys have been constantly updating it. You did one Tamriel, which was a big deal not too long ago. So like, has this proven to be a more effective way to let people know, hey, ESO is still going and you should come play it, or is it not so much about that?
No, it's all about that. It's about making the world bigger with lots more to do, tell great new stories, new areas to explore. But we made it so that veteran players will enjoy it and new players will enjoy it. You know, and I come from a traditional MMO background, and in the old days, what we did is we brought out an expansion, and basically the only people that bought it were experienced players, because you had to be max level in order to buy it and enjoy it. That's the difference between this and between Morrowind and those days, is anyone can just jump in and have fun. You can play casually. You don't have to power level to get there. You don't have to pay your guild to come in and level your alt for you. You know, you don't have to do any of that stuff. You can just jump in and play.
That's so interesting. That I hope you don't mind me digging into like the business side for a minute, but I find the continued existence and flourishing of certain MMOs kind of fascinating. And your experience is unique in this respect, because I think you can speak to what you might call like two different ages of MMORPG development. You know, the like very much like $15 a month subscription pack stuff, and then the I would, a certain golden age, and then the modern, more free to play stuff. So I think that's a really good point. That the idea that an expansion pack is more valuable if an MMO if it's accessible to everyone rather than the top tier. But you did that in Dark Age of Camelot. I'm curious, like, how do the numbers of adoptions compare with an expansion pack to Dark Age of Camelot, where it's mostly accessible to max level players versus now? Did it seem like there was more excitement around Dark Age or more excitement around a content update like this?
Yeah, it's hard to answer that question because the times were so different, right? It's back then, that's what you did. You had a really hardcore play experience with a level-based game where you brought out new content to the hardcore players to incent them to get up to high levels to play the expansion.
Right.
Here, it's much more of a virtual world, and I'm using that term in the literal sense. It's more like we're putting new entry point into the world of Tamriel, and you can join there or you can join in the where the original game started. It's okay. Either way's fine. There's no levels. You can just walk across the world to get to new places, walk from one to the other, or take a boat if you want. So I think the difference is player freedom. You know, in the Dark Age of Camelot days, you played a certain number of hours to power level your way up, so you could PvP, which was a lot of Camelot was about PvP, and have a lot of fun killing other players, interact with the great guild, and then when we brought out expansions back then, it was find new armor, new loot, new stories, and continue your journey.
Right.
ESO is so much bigger than Camelot was. We have a much more mass market of people. We're on consoles. We're on Mac. We're on PC. And so what ESO does that those older games didn't do is appeal to people that just want to go in and have fun and not grind so much. You just want to go in, play an Elder Scrolls game, go on a great quest, meet some characters that you may have run into in other Elder Scrolls games or their ancestors, since we're set before a long time before those, and just experience the world of Tamriel and don't worry so much about game mechanics. That's what ESO is all about.
I wonder
to those players. Obviously, we have the more hardcore systems where you PvP and end game PvE, but you don't have to do it.
Yeah. So I wonder if you could speak to how the design philosophy has changed in the last 10, 20 years. I mean, in those older games, it always felt like, I was a bit younger then and I was playing. I always felt like the idea was to give you a lot of things to do, a big tier to climb, big, power curve to climb, and keep you in the game as long as possible and sort of stretch things out almost because you were paying on a monthly basis, so that was like a significant revenue driver, I assume. But now with a game like this, it seems like the main revenue you get, other than just like pure sales of the game on console or whatever, is in-game transactions. There's no monthly fee. So I wonder, how has that shifted the way you approach designing and developing, for lack of a better word, content for this game?
Well, it adds a new level of content, meaning we have to put things in the stores like costumes, pets, and things like that. But what it really comes down to is you want to make great content, even in both situations, right? You want to make a great game, and that works to both models, subscription and subscription optional. And of course, in ESO, we have a membership, we have a subscription that gives you some incentives every month. But really what it comes down to, you want to make a good game, you want to make great content, but with the ESO monetization system, what we're doing is we're adding in game systems and fun stuff, but we're also adding in mounts and pets and costumes and systems that allow players to express their individuality a little, and those are the things that monetize very well, because in a virtual world game you want like you named yourself Raincoat because it's cool. But what if you want to look, you want to change your look to be different from other players, that's where the Crown Store stuff comes in.
Nice. Yeah, Brian, what if you want an actual raincoat?
Could you guys patch in a raincoat for me for Raincoat?
Anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
That doesn't mean we're going to do it, but it's possible.
No, I have just giving me flashbacks to my old MMO playing days when I put stuff like that on the forums, and that's the exact response I would always get. I'm going to just quickly remind our viewers that if you want to ask questions for Matt, feel free, and we will relay them on. My next question, Matt, is when you went to rebuild like essentially a lot of the elements of an old Elder Scrolls game, how much, what kind of like assets did you have inside of Bethesda? What kind of research did you have to do to look at how they built Morrowind? And were you able to like look at? I'm guessing, kind of curious. Like, was it just sort of like pulling art assets out and reading old quest development, or did you like wind up having to dig into the code and architecture to understand how they built something like that back then?
Wow. Yeah. So ESO itself is based on the Elder Scrolls IP, obviously. Mm-hmm. So we have a group here that's dedicated to making sure that the lore is consistent between Bethesda Game Studios and ZOS, ZeniMax Online. Mm-hmm. So we have a lore master here whose full-time job is making sure lore is consistent and characters are named appropriately based on their race, and so forth. So we have the mechanics already to do everything that you just said. But since we went back to Vardenfell, the island of Vardenfell, which is where Morrowind is, what it let us do is we got to go back and use the map assets that they had in the original Morrowind game. So we actually had the island footprint, so to speak, and we used that as the basis for laying out our version of Vardenfell. So where there were map pins and towns and stuff like that in Elder Scrolls 3, mm-hmm. we put stuff there in ESO Morrowind. So we definitely use it as a backdrop to the game that we made.
Alex, where did you go?
Nowhere. I wonder. I wonder what, well, like, sort of what the resource distribution is there between. It's not often that we get to talk to somebody who's working with another studio in tandem on a shared, I guess, universe, for lack of a better term. How does that constrain your work as a developer? I wonder. Like, is it tricky to try and navigate how to tell new stories within an established property, or is it in some ways freeing because you don't have to come up with as much stuff, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it's much more freedom. What we did when we first came up with the concept for ESO is we had to pick a time period, and obviously the obvious choices were after Skyrim, between Oblivion and Skyrim, or before all the other games. And the true Elder Scrolls fans know that every Elder Scrolls game, Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, and Oblivion, all take place within about 20 years of each other in Tamriel years, and then Skyrim takes place about 200 years after Oblivion. So we chose to go into the past and go about 700 years before those other games. So what that gave us is 700 years isn't so long in Tamriel terms. So the races are the same, the provinces are roughly the same, the towns are in the same place. But it was far enough in the past that we could tell our own stories with our own characters. So, but let us put in some fun Easter eggs. So, for example, in Imperial City DLC, you found the founder of the Blades. That's the bodyguard of the Septums that you run into in Oblivion. And in Morrowind, there are just endless numbers of callbacks to Elder Scrolls 3. If you walk around and play through the content enough, you'll find ancestors to characters that you met when you played Elder Scrolls 3. One of our most famous ones is as part of the main quest in Elder Scrolls 3, you had to meet all of the dead Nerevarrians, the guys that claimed to be the god and actually weren't and were killed. In ESO Morrowind, you actually run into one of them when he's still alive, and you try to stop him from doing what he ends up doing, which is claiming to be the Nerevarrian and dying. So, so if you never played Elder Scrolls 3, it's a cool story. But if you played Elder Scrolls 3, you'll go, wait a minute, I know that guy, and then you'll put two and two together. And
real quick, I'm just going to ask if Alex can go ahead and catch up with me here so we can go off on some actual adventuring and not just dive into the canals when he challenges me to a duel.
Passive aggressive. Real quick, I don't know if Alex is listening. I don't know if he's available. Maybe he could just come join the rest of us so we could actually have an adventure.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll stop fishing. I'm over here fishing. It's really good.
Oh, no, that's okay. You're fishing, but I do want to get adventuring.
Thought I'd do fish for you.
Sorry.
Sorry, is there any way that I can see what you guys are playing?
If you go to twitch.tv/Gamasutra, you'll get a delay. We're normally able to... We try to broadcast as much gameplay we can to our guests, but sometimes with PC games, it's not possible.
Yeah, sure.
Because it sends my computer into a spiraling downward.
Join us, Matt. Come along.
While Alex is catching up, and while Matt is just going to spy on us from afar, and from a few seconds behind in time. Matt, my next question from you will be, you get to, I think you're in a rare position where you get to draw on, several years of MMO development through the history of ESO and back to Dark Age of Camelot. But you're also, as the online game world has turned a bit, it's also... like live game, more and more games have taken on the live games moniker. More games are trying to do things where, using event systems, even if they're not massively online the way others are. Has that what have you learned from other online games, I guess is my question.
Yeah, this is the thing that we call affectionately games as a service.
Yeah.
So and what that means basically is once you've launched a game, you don't just walk away from it anymore. You add in new content, maybe you add in some monetization so that you can add things for players that they can purchase after the fact. So Elder Scrolls Online launched as a subscription-based game, so we already were set up for games as a service, and we changed, of course, our revenue model over time to be subscription optional and add in virtual currency and so forth. So I've seen kind of all sides of that, and I think, when you look around, you see games that are doing this that you wouldn't think, you wouldn't think of in that sense. But of course, Grand Theft Auto is the big one, where it launched as GTA 5 and now it's GTA Online, and it's got a lot of cool systems built in. You can jump in and meet other players and run jobs around the world. There's just a lot of good examples of, you wouldn't think that this game was going to do this, but it does, and it does it well. FIFA Soccer, which is a game that I love, has great replayability when you play through seasons against other players, and then you can purchase items that make yourself stand out a little bit, and players and things like that. So we really look at kind of the industry as a whole and kind of look and see what other people are doing. But when it comes down to it, what really matters in these things is making sure that the monetization and post-launch content you come up with is appropriate for your game, because each game is different. And so you want to make sure that it fits in, it's natural, and it's things that players actually want to participate in.
Nice. Run away.
Yeah, we're scary. I wonder, Matt, something that strikes me looking over your history. Why have you stuck so closely to online games? What is it about making online games that attracts you as opposed to, more traditional, like offline, start and endpoint narrative experiences?
It's a great story. A great question. I think in the however many years, I don't want to count, that I've been in the industry, I have basically shipped maybe 15 games, and not one of them was single player. So I have actually never made a single player game. Well, we worked on one once at Mythic, and it got canceled, but for reasons unrelated. But it's what I've always done. It's like I played multiplayer BBS games in the 1980s, and it's like it's always been kind of my gaming experience has mostly been online, even though it's been, in those days it was text based and MUDs and things like that. But it really, really is something that I find natural, which is make a world, put content in it, put cool game systems in that players want to participate in the world and interact with each other and go from there.
I wonder, did you play a lot of tabletop role-playing games as a kid, or not so much?
Yeah, I played a fair amount of original AD&D. That was
nice.
And we branched out into other things over the years in college and stuff, like Traveler and Rollmaster and things like that. But my tabletop games really stopped around 1990 when computer gaming was coming on, and I focused on that after that.
Do you still think about, I'm stealing Alex's question that he asks all our guests, is do you still think about tabletop games when you're making stuff for this game?
Only in the sense of the best tabletop games are not based around rule systems, they're based around stories. And the best games are based around, of the games that I make, the best games are based around stories, not around systems, if you see what I mean. Like you want the world to be compelling. You want the player to be interested in exploring and talking to NPCs and finding things out. And that comes directly from role-playing games. Like that's from tabletop games. So it's perfectly... we, in fact, have old-school D&D developers here. We have, I think, 2 of the original 15 TSR employees, Lawrence Schick and Dave Cook. Zeb Cook are here. Yeah, Lawrence is our lore master. He's the guy that maintains our lore. And Zeb was the zone lead, the guy in charge of creating Vardenfell, which is the zone that Morrowind is in. So,
it's funny you talk about taking strong inspiration from stories, right, and wanting to focus on telling great stories. I always, I played a lot as a kid too, and what I really treasured about tabletop role-playing games was less. It was about having systems within which you could play your own stories, and that, I think, for me at least, has really carried over into the enduring appeal of online games. Like there are certainly tons of stories and quests and little bits and pieces here and there, but I think a lot of players also get a lot of joy and fulfillment out of things like the housing system and stuff, where they can just sort of create their own little worlds and little stories they want to tell.
Those sandbox type systems are fantastic. We have housing. We also have what we call the justice system, but it's really the thieving, looting, and fencing system. If you want to play as an outlaw, there's no quest involved, no story, but you can go kill and pickpocket and break and enter into people's houses and fence the goods. And, and people play ESO and do nothing but that. Right. And that's great. It's they don't really do many quests, and but they love going and looting and so that's great. People love crafting. We have people that just log in and craft and sell stuff to their guildmates. That's fine.
Speaking of this, real quick, Alex, where'd you go? Like,
I just disappeared like the wind. I don't know. I'm just climbing something over here. What are you up to?
Climbing a temple.
Yeah.
I'm riding through this town. Someone's asked for our help. We should go help them.
Okay.
This is our role playing. This is probably how our two characters would act. This is like actually how.
Look, you and your fancy golden horse with your fancy golden dog. I'm just gonna walk back here
Did you just
like a
insult
pleb.
my fancy golden dog?
No, of course not. It's beautiful. It's very.
You can see him on the compass. That crown.
Yeah, I can.
Crown icon. Okay, yeah.
Just trying to get him to.
It's very
The
bougie.
dog follows me more than Alex does. Let me put it that way. Matt, next question. I don't quite remember where Mythic was located in the world. It was in Texas, right?
No, Fairfax, Virginia.
Oh, it was
in the DC suburbs.
It was in Fairfax, Virginia. Okay, so you've stayed around, done game development in the DMV your whole life. I'm from the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia region. How's it been like making games in that part of the world, especially when it's not necessarily as like it's not what you would think of as a game development hub in the way other cities are. Although, like obviously you've got Firaxis and you've got some other great companies over there, but it's not like San Francisco or Seattle. Sorry, now I'm just lost. But yeah, how's it like making games in our nation's capital?
Well, I'm actually in that area, but a long way from there now. But yeah. So since I've never worked anywhere else, it's great. No, but Baltimore and Hunt Valley is actually a pretty decent gaming hub.
Mm-hmm.
Sid Meier, of course, had Microprose here, and so a lot of studios grew up over that. So within 15 miles of me, there's Firaxis. Wargaming has an office here. There's about 4 mobile startups. Zynga East was here for a couple of years. Big Huge Games is here with Brian Reynolds. So it's its own legit game industry hub. It's just not one that people talk about a lot because it's a lot of developers that are basically just heads down. And of course, Bethesda Softworks and ZeniMax is in Bethesda or in Rockville, Maryland. So it's not too far away either. So that's a lot of talent in those areas.
Do you get to spend a lot of time? Obviously, I mean, within your own company, you obviously get to talk to other Bethesda people. But do you get to how much time do you get to spend talking to other developers in your community? And sort of like, what do you think defines the Baltimore game development community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty laid back. It's pretty old school. There's a lot. I mean, when you talk Sid Meier and those guys, it goes back to the roots of the video game industry. But we do interact. We actually have a pickup soccer league that meets twice a week here in Hunt Valley, where guys from all over the different studios come and play. Because game development's a pretty international crew. Mm-hmm. So we have some good times there. There's the IGDA has meetings up here in Hunt Valley, and we meet there a couple of times a year. So there's things going on, and of course there's a lot of over 20, 30 years of game development in Hunt Valley. Everyone knows everyone else here, so there's a lot of socialization between studios too.
Nice. I wonder, just out of my own curiosity, how can you estimate how big you guys are now, and sort of how big you were at peak? I'm always been curious to know what the operating staff level is of an active MMO studio.
So at ZeniMax, we don't talk about size of an employee. So it basically it's the philosophy is let the games do the talking. Don't. So that's why people generally don't know a lot about how Bethesda studios do things, because basically it's just let the games speak for themselves. So
all right, fair enough. Here we go. Oh, sorry, Brian.
Boss character.
Yep. I see him.
Yeah.
Is he a boss?
He's tougher than everyone else.
I mean, I knew that. He's a boss. So then maybe you will be less excited to talk about this too, but I also sort of want to get a read on what the MMO business is like these days. Like I said, we don't get a chance to talk to folks who are working on an active MMO, and I'm curious, how many registered users, for lack of, I feel like I'm talking in mobile parlance now, but how many registered users do you think this game has, and of that, how many are paying either once or on a regular basis?
Well, of course, we're not free to play, so everyone playing ESO paid
right,
to
of course,
to the
get
game.
in, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so everyone's paying. Last year at E3, we announced 7 million players. I forget what number we actually announced last year. It was really good. But E3 is coming up again, and you might get some more information in just a couple of days at the Bethesda conference. About
yes, at Bethesda Land,
Right.
where the eclectic billionaire Mr. Bethesda will let us into his closed amusement park for the first time in years. Sorry.
Yeah, are you guys going?
I won't be there. Sorry.
Yeah, we personally will not be there, but Gamasutra will be there and have a presence.
So yeah, there's an Elder Scrolls Online portion of that, so you'll find information out.
Nice.
I will say, what's it like, making games like this, and it's basically all I've done, but it's really cool to be able to work on something where you get to work on it for a long time and change it over time as your players move and morph, and you can take the game in different directions based on the players, what players want. We've done so much to ESO since launch just based on community feedback, like removing levels from the game, and so you can explore, so you can go anywhere in the world you want without worrying about what level the content is. We brought out a new PvP mode in Morrowind, Battlegrounds, because players love our open world PvP, but by definition that's not super balanced, because whoever shows up in numbers usually wins. So we have a balanced 4-on-4-on-4 Battlegrounds now. So we do listen to the community, and we've done so much stuff to the game based on that. Players wanted to go to Morrowind. We've had lots of requests for people who wanted to go back to Morrowind, and so that's what making a game like this is all about, is turning it into a virtual world, making sure that the players that are playing it have content that they love, and doing more of what they love and less of what they don't. And that's really what it turns into.
Yeah. Was there any special sort of like evolutions you had to make to deal with this kind of scale? So like you talk about like 7 million or so, and I think of MMORPGs before World of Warcraft. I feel like I never heard of them going much above 500,000 or maybe 1 million at most. So I don't know what Dark Age ever got up to at max, but I imagine this sounds like it's a bit bigger. How has that changed the way you build and maintain the world?
Wow, we could go on for hours about that, but
let's do it.
We have an interesting server structure in ESO that is unique in this generation of online games. And we keep throwing around the term MMO, and I get derided for this all the time by the more old school MMO people. But I really think MMO now is a technology. It's not a game anymore. Because Destiny is an MMO. I mean, by any standards, but it's not a tab targeting, hit F12 and watch your character fight game. It's World of Tanks is by any definition a massively multiplayer game, and it's not what you would call a EverQuest style MMO. So, really, to me, MMO means a technology that you use to bring lots of players into a world space and let them interact with each other. And by that I mean a lot of people. So, MMO technology can, like, if you look at the EverQuest and Dark Age of Camelot and Ultima Online, a lot of the technology that's in those games you'll find in things like Facebook, and because they were the first online social communities, and they were with group chat and friends lists and things like that. All of that came from those older MMOs, and so that's the technology that makes up MMO to me. But in terms of server structure for ESO, we did not want to have the traditional 200 server. Every server is its own world. You can't transfer characters between servers. Which is what we did in Camelot and the older games, and even WoW, although it's changed a little bit recently. So what we do is we have what we call mega server, where we instance all of our zones. So you just log into the game. We do have a North American version and a European version, but you can freely play on either one. But once you're on the North American server, you never pick another server. The whole Western Hemisphere is open to you and to go play. And the game kind of figures out how many instances of each zone to spin up and which zone to put you in. So right now you're in Vardenfell. There are probably 10 or 15 or 20 instances of Vardenfell running right now. And you don't need to know that, right? If you want to... if a friend's online right now and he's not in your version of Morrowind, you can just go to the friends menu and say, take me to him, and it'll take you to whatever layer he's on. So those are the kind of cool things that are happening behind the scenes in game development, where it takes all of the decision making out of the player's hands. Because, you know, you guys all played EverQuest and World of Warcraft. The first decision you ever made was, what server do I go on? And that decision really was made without any knowledge from you on what you were getting yourself into, and it was irreversible. So, you know, and that's the way those worked. It's once you got into a shard, that was your shard, and you never talked to anyone else. So we wanted to fix that problem with ESO, and we did.
Yeah, man, RP server for life. So, like, is there any? And like you said, this you could probably take hours trying to dig into the meat of this, but like, is there any quick example of how you've had to change your approach to designing and maintaining these worlds to account for the shifting nature of the servers?
Well, that's the kind of thing that you make the decision to do the server this way, and then all the other decisions flow out of that. So we made that decision somewhat early on, so that it didn't have too big of an impact on development timelines. But you know, that's the kind of thing where you design the game and the server around the type of game that you want to make, and then you stick to that decision.
Yeah, that was ages ago. I mean, this game came out in 2014, and you know, I read that it was in development for quite some time before that. So I imagine you must still be moving within the bounds of a design philosophy established, you know, maybe as long as a decade ago. I wonder, how has that constrained your work, if at all? Is there anything you wish you could have done differently on launching the game?
Well, we've been very open with the fact that, you know, we had a lot of work to do after the game's original launch, as all MMOs do. But you know, we have gone in and made tons of changes to take it away from what I call the mid 2000s style, you know, level-based, realm-based MMO, and turned it into much more of a modern console RPG, online RPG, which is what we've done. So we put in tons of changes to lessen the impact of decision making. Like, you can very quickly and easily and cheaply respec your character. We allow all characters to use all armor and all weapons. You know, so there's a lot of freedom in there. And now with One Tamriel, which you were talking about, which we came out with last year, you know, you can group with anyone in the world whenever you want, no matter what level they are. If you like, we had the problem before One Tamriel that all other level-based MMOs had, which is where once the community gets very mature and older and everyone's high level, it's really hard for a new player to start the game because there's no one in the low level areas. Let's just say, you know, you play the game every day, and after a year you finally talk your wife to play the game, and it's impossible to play together in traditional MMOs. Well, One Tamriel solved that problem, and that's that you can just play with them because the levels are meaningless when it comes to that social interaction, so that you can go and help them level and experience the stories again. But you can still you are still fighting monsters that are enemies that are at least somewhat hard for you, and it's not like you need to start a new character when your significant other does, right? So, by the way, the quest you're on is one of my favorites in the whole zone.
I'm really enjoying this. It's like I actually stopped to do this, and I didn't expect I'd be helping out Elder Scrolls Batman. But I was going to real quick. NeoCal plays says something I don't fully understand, but I'll just repeat it to add to our conversation. Is they argue that MMO is not individual sessions and meta progression; it's just playing continuously. I guess, Matt, with the best way I can jump off NeoCal Play's point is, you know, this is a content-driven MMO, which I personally enjoy more than, you know, competitive MMOs, for instance. Like, I love going through quests in World of Warcraft. I like going through quests like this one. Even how does it sometimes feel to be making content slower than players can consume it? And how do you account for that?
So yeah, I got over feeling bad about that a long time ago, because there is no way you can win that battle. So what you do is, you know, you put in great content that players want to play, and then you put in systems that don't require content developers making content. So, you know, we have things like our PvP system. We have our dungeon and trial, which is our rating system. Is competitive. It has leaderboards, so you're always incented to try to go in and do it faster. We have the outlaw justice system, like I just told you about, where you could just go and farm gold if you want and not have to go on any quests.
Yeah.
We have the Thieves Guild has heists that you can go on, daily quests that you can go work for the Thieves Guild and steal money. The Dark Brotherhood has, of course, you can go assassinate NPCs for money. So we have a lot of these repeatable sandboxy type systems, and those are to let players, and of course housing. I mean, I could go on forever. We have housing, we have a lot of role-playing stuff in the game with emotes, so you can dance and play the flute and play drums, and we have a ton of emotes in the game, and players love those. So there are lots of RP guilds, role-playing guilds that players get together and just hang out, and we try to have holiday events and things like that. So we do a lot of work to make sure there's always something to do, but that something to do isn't always handcrafted quests.
Alex, are you in that building right now?
I guess so.
Do you want to?
I'm reading a book about cheese.
Do you want to go murder some people?
I mean, I'm pretty into this book about cheese.
All right.
But all right, we can go. I guess we can go hurt somebody.
There was a genuine question. If you don't want to, you can keep.
All right, I'll come back outside. And while I do, a question that I've been meaning to ask for some time, that I'm just going to slide in here because I can't segue to it, is I think a lot of developers are looking at the rise of what you might call massively multiplayer games on console, free-to-play games on console, and kind of evaluating it. So I wonder, Matt, can you speak at all to what the difference is between the audience for this game on PC and the audience on consoles? Is one bigger than the other, less, smaller? Is one more active than the other? Like how do those two demographics break down from your perspective?
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in that question. First, it's region-based, so depending on where the player is, they prefer different platforms. I will say, player habit-wise, we were somewhat concerned when we first started evaluating ESO on console, because we thought it was going to be a little too hardcore for players. But what we found out is actually the opposite, is that players really play ESO the same way no matter what platform they're playing it. Like there are hardcore trial rating guilds on Xbox. There, I think the world's best dueler, where you one-on-one combat in the world, it plays on Xbox. There are people that play the game super hardcore and only PvP on PS4. It's really your platform of choice at this point. It doesn't really dictate your game style. So, and it's really true. It's something that we didn't realize when we started the game on console. We had no idea that was going to happen that way. So,
yeah, I was. I'm really curious about your comment earlier about how preferences differ by region. Is there a certain region where Xbox is huge or PS4 is huge, or a certain region where it's all PC and that's it?
Yeah, well, I mean, like places like Russia and where it's very much dominated by PC. And Elder Scrolls in North America, because of Skyrim, is very much a console experience. We have tons of PC players, like I'm not saying, but we have a lot of console players too, because of the success of Skyrim. And Oblivion was huge on Xbox 360 and PS3, and even Morrowind was on the generation before that. So it's a very when you say Elder Scrolls to most Elder Scrolls gamer, they think console, they don't think PC. Right.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me. I've always thought of it as a PC franchise because that's where I started. But of course, you're right. It was huge on console here.
Exactly. And of course, the players that play it the longest and do modding and things like that are on PC. So those are the ones where they play it long term. But it's definitely a franchise that has a ton of console fans. So by taking ESO to console, we tapped into those guys, and it's been a huge success for us.
Nice.
I'm going to get to a question from the chat here. RK Sanders says that they note that the UI is very similar to Skyrim. Is there any art that has been carried over from the other games, or is everything remade fresh for ESO?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's no direct art copies just because of the differences between the engines. But we definitely took design cues from other Elder Scrolls games. Skyrim, but also Oblivion. And in this case, a lot of the world art in this zone, of course, is very much stylized by Morrowind. So.
Woof, we got ourselves in a bit of a pickle here.
No, we're fine. We're fine. I love pickles. They're great. It's gonna be good.
So something that came up during we chatted with Ken Ralston a couple weeks ago, and he said something that I thought was really kind of fun about his history with tabletop games and making content for Worlds. He said that in pre-production for Morrowind, which we're in the online version of that world now, so we are walking in his footsteps. What he said he did was he, like, in pre-production, mapped out towns not as places where certain quests would be located, but as, like, a set of characters with relationships, and to try and, like use that as a starting point for designers and players to, like, make associations between the systems. Has that approach influenced your work at all? Have you sort of, like, gotten to understand the way, like, Morrowind organized towns and stuff, and have you used that to work on the online version?
Yeah, well, back when they were doing the older Elder Scrolls games, what he just said was radically different.
Mm-hmm.
It's like story based, but the NPCs have their own stories with each other, and that's that's something that every RPG designer learned from, because just about everyone else does that now too. Like, why is this town this way? Is it in Morrowind's case? Is it under House Telvanni, or is it under House Redoran? And those answers to those questions will determine how the NPCs talk, how they dress, how they interact with each other, if you ever see them talking with one another, and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, we carry that forward mostly because that's a very Elder Scrolls thing to do, and it's a very RPG thing to do.
Yeah, right on. Brian, what are we doing here? Why are we hurting?
I just wrapped up. I just wrapped up. I was burning some stuff for like I said, for Elder Scrolls Batman. Elder Scrolls Batman needed some help, and so I burned some stuff for her. Look, possibly her.
What if we just have a seat? I just want to cook something. You want to cook something?
Yeah, let's cook something. Sure, let's go for it.
I can't cook. Can you cook? I'm not good at cooking.
Let's find out if I'm good at cooking.
So we are unfortunately already pushing the edge of our hour. Matt, before we get into the whole wrap up and everything, something I like to ask developers is sort of you have been in the industry for quite some time. You have a remarkable breadth of experience. For any developers who are getting into online game design, or just getting into game design in general, like, what kind of advice would you give them as someone who's been doing this for quite some time? Like, what should they know about the art of game development?
Yeah, I get asked all the time, how do I get into the industry? And which is kind of one way of answering the question that you're asking. I will say it's really, really good to be really good at one thing. It's be a great designer, be a great engineer, be a great artist. That's to get into the bigger studios. But the biggest thing that you need is the ability to solve problems, love what you're doing, and most importantly, figure out what game it is that you're making early on in the process, so you don't go down a lot of dead ends. And that happens on all game projects. It's you go into it with one game idea, and then you come out of it with another sometimes, and you want to avoid that if you can, because it takes a long time, way too long sometimes. And so, it's really good to have a good idea of what you're doing when you start.
Yeah, I think that's probably wise. That's wise. That's like really hard too, right? I mean, just
it is. Someone just died.
I died.
We died.
Did you die too?
Yeah.
I guess that's what happens when we don't actually fight together.
I couldn't live without you. I just had to go.
I can't live without you. We have a few minutes left, so I'm just gonna give a shout out to the chat that if you have any questions for Matt, you should ask them, so that we can provide you with some elder wisdom, some Elder Scrolls wisdom. Please don't hurt me for that pun.
So I would love to know, Matt, how's it been launching an expansion? You mentioned this came out on Tuesday. We're wrapping up the week now. It's Friday. How has that gone for you and all the rest of the developers?
It was a little exciting at times, but we've it's gone pretty smoothly. We're super happy with it. Obviously, you're playing it right now, and it's great. It's holding up pretty well across all the different platforms. We're on PC, Mac, and of course Xbox One and PlayStation 4.
Sure.
So it's gone well. You know, it's been super well received by the guys that have reviewed it and by our players. You know, there's always little things to fix here and there, but I think overall it's been awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, I would love to keep streaming this quest. This is probably a decent time. So, oh my God.
That is totally not Commissioner Gordon, by the way.
Yeah, no. Sorry, just the robot camel just rolled by, not Commissioner. Not Commissioner.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm
Gordon.
about 30 seconds behind you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Watch.
Sorry, so I'll go ahead and just start wrapping things up. Thank you all for joining us again for a nice, fun hour on the Gamasutra Twitch channel. We have been streaming the Elder Scrolls Morrowind and talking with game director Matt Firor. Did I say that right?
Firor.
Firor. I'm
Firor.
sorry.
Sorry.
I always say their last names at the end of the show, and it gets so hard. Yeah, so we've been talking with Matt Firor. We would appreciate it if you would scroll down and click the follow button so that you can get notified of future interviews we're doing with developers. And we've got some E3 coverage coming up, because E3 is next week. We're sending our post-apocalyptic hobo to the show to report back to us, and we're going to be talking and just assessing the state of the game industry in 2016 in June. Next week. So, Matt, is there anywhere you'd like to send people if they have more questions about ESO development?
You know, obviously go to our forums or our Reddit page. Either one is fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can always find Elder Scrolls community people on various sites, but we have our own official forums too. So, and of course, jump into the game.
Yeah, sweet. Well, thank you so much, Matt. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and hope you all have a lovely day. Bye.
You too, Brian. Bye.